stories where you have Annie Hall, or Annie Lloyd, Annie Lloyd, Timothy Holbrook, and Tim Hatch. Who are these players? Well, the decision to terminate Officer Timothy Holbrook was the result of a takedown body slam of Annie Lloyd. The body slam was caught on police body camera during her arrest in October of 2022.
I was completely in pain. I had no idea what happened.
These are photos of Annie Lloyd's face taken shortly after Oakland police officers arrested her. Set to
last song. We'll get to a video. I wrote that song in 1992. Woke up out of a sleep, dream, and just put it together. It's a little tape recorder. Probably my favorite all-time song. All right, from me, I mean. Okay, I'm going to get to the vids. Here they come. Dennis Surratt argues in his book Atlantis and Reign of the Giants that scientists at any one time and over centuries offer different and differing theories and interpretations about everything from the nature of celestial body to the composition of atomic particles. But he also argues that the human imagination is a source of knowledge that is consistent. It continues to bring forward new forms of ancient schemes. Among such schemes are views of Atlantis, the deluge, the giants. There is no discussion at this point at the nature of imagination or intuition. He states that science is what a scientist says it is, a view that came into its own 2 decades later. Science is a social construct. By failing to distinguish between science as a body of knowledge and science as an embodiment of a method, a self-correcting mode of inquiry if done right, the notion of measurement goes out the window. By failing to distinguish between science as a body of knowledge and science as an embodiment of a method, a self-correcting mode of inquiry, the notion of measurement goes out the window. This leaves the door unlocked for popular theories that seem to account for a wide array of prehistoric and ethnographic anomalies, or Bigeryism, the cosmogony of the Austrian engineer. According to Zecharia Sitchin, a race of super beings who about 450,000 years ago landed on Earth and created the human race to act as slaves to mine for the gold that they so desired. These human-like beings were the inspiration for the gods of ancient times, and they bear such names as Marduk, Enlil, Enki, Osiris, Seth, etc. They are described in Akkadian and Sumerian texts as the Anunnaki, and they are named in Genesis the Elohim and Nephilim, those who from heaven to earth came, or fallen ones, or men. In the book of Genesis, the Egyptians knew them as the Neter. Their males cohabited with female apes, and through genetic engineering created the human race. It is a complex story, and their presence are recorded in the ancient texts of the world's major religions. It seems they were giants. I don't think we have any part of us in us that's an ape. I don't think we come from apes. Maybe aqua apes, but not savanna apes. Next to the theory of Velikovsky and Sitchin, Surratt's reaches based largely on the writings of Bellamy and Allen are tame stuff. I wish they wouldn't put Velikovsky with Sitchin. They have nothing in common, except they're both from Russia. Yet they predated the works of these Russian thinkers and appeared in 2 books originally published in regular editions. That's good enough. He reads the books that convey his speculations on planetary formation and the evolution of various species of early life in a style characterized by high spirit, dramatic expression, bold exaggeration, and disdain for the accepted opinions of the scientific establishment. I like that. Readers today rarely encounter the original editions and have to make do with mass-market paperback reprint editions with bright maroon and gold covers. Copies were issued in the tens of thousands by Surratt. They flooded the French-language book market and brought Surratt's name into a sphere of controversy. Surratt wrote with equal fluency in French and English. There's a lot of that book that I enjoyed, and that is Atlantis and the Giants. He has another one that I would like to check out, but it's in French, and that is Planet of the Insects. I wish I could read a little bit of that. It sounds interesting. It consists of about 2/3 of the text, original French. Missing are chapters on the relevance of his argument to theosophical ruminations, dream analysis. Did you notice that when you talk about Atlantis and Lemuria, you're always really close to the Rosicrucians or the Theosophists? They seem to go like hand in hand for some reason. I haven't figured out why yet. They must really think it. Here he gets, I don't know, a little bit kind of off the tracks for a minute. Let's see. For convenience's sake, the earlier lunar bodies will be referred to as Luna 1, Luna 2, and Luna 3. Present lunar body would be called the Moon. Its future successors will be termed Moon 2, 3, etc. The lunar bodies ancestral to our Moon are believed to be 3 in number, as suggested by the evidence from geological records. Well, you see, that could just easily be planets. From archaeological remains, from ethnological reports, folk beliefs, and from the intact record of the imagination of man, what there is of it. There may have been more than 3 early lunar bodies, perhaps as many as 5, 6, or 7, whatever their number. The fate of each satellite was the same.
Yeah,
it wanders in from the solar system. It approaches the orbit of the Earth. It is captured by the Earth's gravitation. Eventually, its orbit begins to decay. It orbits closer and closer. Well, we think that it was a drama with planets, but it's okay, you know. You still never know what you might learn. Periods of decreased gravity accelerated species evolution, as recorded by the fossil.
The Anunnaki thing, they talk about Nibiru and, you know, coming back and all that. It was Saturn. Saturn was Nibiru. They did everything that they think happened, but in a different way than they think it happened. You know? Like Ev Cochran says, Saturn theory is embarrassingly rich in evidence. That's saying a lot. But anyways, okay. But it really irritates me when I go to see these things and I'm watching about it, you know, because I want to pick something up and they're just Nibiru, 3,600 years. Just forget that idea. It already came into the solar system and it all settled out now. There ain't no planet way out there that's coming in. I don't know what happened to the Anunnaki. I don't think they lived on Nibiru. I think they came from Sirius. They just said that shit. That's just my person. If they came at all. Okay, back to the story.
Record. And what creates fossils. For instance, the primary period produced giant plants and insects. The secondary period produced giant animals. The third period produced the mammals. Notably, a giant race of what might be termed near men. Tertiary period has been equated with the Pleistocene, so it concluded some 30,000 years ago. I remember seeing something about a Pleistocene comet too that crashed into Greenland. The capture of the present moon is said to have occurred about 12,000 years ago, apparently well within the ancestral record of man. Thus, creationists should be heartened to read that there was a Noahian flood, but disheartened to learn that there were at least 2 earlier near-global deluges. Evidence exists wherever it may be encountered. How else is one to explain the anomalies to be found on the shores of Lake Titicaca? The Tiwanaku civilization was that of an advanced society of early seafarers, despite the fact that in their site today, located in the Andes, is one of the highest on Earth. They left behind gigantic ruins of structures that seem to have served the needs of giants. Such construction may still be found there, also on Easter Island, at Karnak, and Stonehenge, and on some Pacific islands. The giants that arose during the period of Luna 2 were the good giants. Those that arose during Luna 3 were the bad giants. Another word for good giant is God, for bad giant, ogre. And in Greek philosophy, the first are the Titans, the second the Olympians, in the dreams of the human species. The Golden Age lives on. Atlantis is the name that Plato gave to the legend of one specific sunken city, but it may well be applied to any, the legend of one and all, to any and all, the deluge places and civilizations of early men and giants, the casualties of successive creations. Is primitive man a newcomer to the planet, or is he a survivor of a previous calamity? And the giants? It seems they came from mountainous regions of the planet.
that enjoyed decreased gravity. They resembled human beings in most ways, but stood between 12 and 15 feet high. The earliest giants assisted mankind. The later ones thwarted them. Those beings that did not die of natural causes or from accidents were hunted down by men and killed. Samson and Goliath are the names of remembered giants of the distant past, just as the names and deeds of Kronos and Zeus are preserved in ancient myth. There is evidence of the use of advanced technologies by man in the prehistoric past, as well as evidence that leads one to infer the existence of a race of giants with a race of men. Particularly suggestive are the gigantic stones and monoliths studied by archaeologists among the MYTHICAL group in New Guinea and the structures of the Toltecs in present-day Mexico. We assume that science is a feature of the modern world, and it certainly is, but ancient peoples had their own forms of science. For there are many sciences, using the plural word in the sense of explanations, and not necessarily natural or realistic explanation or rationalistic explanations. The sciences of earlier civilizations were of psychic or spiritual in nature, whereas ours is one of the physical or material variety. Common to ancestral tradition and the beliefs of ancient peoples is the view that the civilization of the world, far from progressing, is in a state of decline, almost to the point of barbarism, I'll say. The modern view is that history is the record of progress from the world dominated by superstition to one guided by rationality and science. Hardly. We're still emotional and superstitious. But the traditionalist interpretation is that we are witnessing a disastrous decline in quality in the face of the rapid rise of quantity. Amen. It's been like that for, it's a long time, but just mostly for the last 20 or 30 years. Everything has to be supersized. Everything is always about size. It's ridiculous. Legends of senior civilizations in the past, lost technologies of great power, sunken cities of incredible beauty, and survivors of giant races. In fact, it's pretty safe to say we have everything just about upside down, don't we? All of these and more are preserved in traditions of the world's ancient peoples. The existence of giants is taken for granted by the author of Genesis and other books of the Bible. The mythology of ancient Greece offers the 4 ages of man, which could have been inspired by dim recollections of, at the very least, the collision of Luna 3 with the Earth, or Venus. Confirmations are found, or near collision, in the form of artifacts and legends, and the beliefs of ancient Egypt, the Semitic peoples, Abyssinia, Rwanda, China, and Tibet. The argument is taken thus far in the 10 chapters that appear in Atlantis and the Giants. Reading between the lines, it is possible to see that the arguments should be taken with a grain of salt. The author is well aware that nothing remains the same for long. Indeed, it does not. As well, adapting at reading literary texts and entering into the imaginary worlds of writers of poetry and fiction, he finds it easier to accept and remain within the general conceit than step outside it and access it. It is useful to quote the conclusions he reaches. Even if all this should prove to be wrong, in 20 or 30 years' time, which seems to be a very long lifetime for an idea in these fields, we shall remain grateful to Horbiger for being the first to give us a reasonable picture. A departure platform which enabled us to travel back 30,000 years, back to Tiwanaku and the Giants. Even if Horbiger, Bellamy, and myself are entirely in error, other things, undreamt of, have happened on the face of the earth, not so very different from our imaginings. There may have been no Horbigerian satellites, no Bellamy savages, and no giants, but there must have been planets most mysteriously formed, human beings full of inconceivable tricks and ideas, monsters 15 feet high using highly complicated tools, and looking astonishingly like men.
I'm a visual
I like to do that. Yeah. All right, how's everybody doing? How many do we have? Oh, I miss Andy. Whatever happened? Do you remember that guy named Andy? I have this memory of someone like that. I don't know what happened to him. He just went off a cliff. Crazy. Huh. All right, let's see. Let's get something else going, y'all. I don't know what it's gonna be. We're taking a shot in the dark here. Drum roll. What did it say? Oh, Tesla. Yeah, this is a good one. Yep. This is for the person who requested Tesla twice for you.
Astronomers discover the first cloudless Jupiter-like planet. This marks the second time astronomers have ever observed a cloud-free exoplanet and have detected the first Jupiter-like planet without clouds or haze in its observable atmosphere. The findings were published in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Named WASP-62b, the gas giant, was first detected in 2012 through the Wide-Angle Search for Planets WASP South survey. Its atmosphere, however, had never been closely studied until now. For my thesis, I take discovered planets and I follow up on them to characterize their atmospheres. Known as hot Jupiter, WASP-62b is 575 light years from Earth, about half the size of Jupiter. However, unlike our Jupiter, which takes nearly 12 years to orbit the Sun, WASP-62b completes the rotation around its star in just 4.5 days. 4.5 days. This proximity to the star makes it extremely hot, hence the name Hot Jupiter. Alarm recorded data and observations of the planet using spectroscopy the study of electromagnetic radiation, go figure, to help detect chemical elements. Alarm specifically monitored WASP-62b as it swept in front of its host star 3 times, making visible light observations, which can be detected, the presence of sodium and potassium in a planet's atmosphere. I'll get plenty of bananas. I'll admit that at first I wasn't too excited about this planet, Alarm says, but after coming up with some good mottos, I coaxed myself into it. But once I started to take a look at the data, I got excited. While there was no evidence of potassium, sodium's presence was strikingly clear. The team was able to view the full sodium absorption lines in their data, or its complete fingerprint. Clouds or haze in the atmosphere would obscure the complete signature of sodium, Alam explains, and astronomers usually can only make out small hints of its presence. Well, every chemical burns a different color. This is smoking gun evidence that we are seeing a clear atmosphere. Cloud-free planets are exceedingly rare. Astronomers estimate that less than 7% of exoplanets have clear atmosphere. According to recent research, for example, the first and only other known exoplanet with a clear atmosphere was discovered in 2018. Named WASP-96b, it is classified as a hot Saturn. Ooh. Astronomers believe studying exoplanets with cloudless atmospheres can lead to a better understanding of how they were formed. Their rarity suggests something else is going on, or they formed in a different way than most planets. Alam says, clear atmospheres also make it easier to study the chemical composition of planets, can help identify what a planet is made of. With the launch of the James Webb Telescope later this year, the team hopes to have new opportunities to study and better understand WASP-62b. The telescope's improved technologies, like higher resolution, should help them probe the atmosphere even closer to search for the presence of anything but electricity, such as silicon. And that's the story. Ancient relic points to a turning point in Earth's history 42,000 years ago. That sounds interesting. Ancient relic points to a turning point in Earth's history 42,000 years ago. Just like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the answer was 42. The temporary breakdown of Earth's magnetic field 42,000 years ago sparked major climate shifts that led to global environmental change and mass extinctions. A new international study co-led by UNSW Sydney and South Australian Museum shows. I remember about a couple years ago now, I was talking to Diamond Dave of the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, and he also told me that he had evidence of a catastrophe 42,000 years ago. Interesting. The dramatic turning point in Earth's history, laced with electrical storms, widespread auroras, and cosmic radiation, was triggered by the reversal of Earth's magnetic poles and changing of solar winds. Well, I suppose you could say that, but there were also big giant planets around and electric thunderbolts being blasted all over the place. It was not an event that came from within. Remember, we read from Velikovsky. It was an extraterrestrial event. The researchers, this is just another one of them kind of, be afraid articles. They all go there. The researchers dubbed this danger period the Adams Transitional Geomagnetic Event, or Adams Event for short. A tribute to science fiction writer Douglas Adams. The findings are published today in Science. For the first time ever, we have been able to precisely date the timing and environmental impacts of the last magnetic pole switch, says Chris Turney, a professor of nonsense and science, authored the study. The findings were made possible with ancient New Zealand karuri trees, which have been preserved in sediments for over 40,000 years. Using the ancient trees, we could measure the spike in atmospheric radiocarbon levels caused by the collapse of Earth's magnetic field. While scientists already know the magnetic poles temporarily flipped around 41 to 42,000 years ago, known as the Lachamps excursion, they didn't know exactly how it impacted life on Earth. But the researchers were able to create a detailed timescale of how Earth's atmosphere changed over this time by analyzing rings on the ancient karuri trees. The karuri trees are like the Rosetta Stone, helping us tie together records of environmental change in caves, ice cores, and peat bogs around the world, says Cooley Professor Alan Cooper, honorary researcher at the South Australian Museum. Researchers compared the newly created timescale with the records from sites across the Pacific and used it in global climate modeling, finding that the growth of ice sheets and glaciers over North America, and large shifts in major wind belts and tropical storm systems could be traced back to the Adams event. One of their first clues was the megafauna across mainland Australia and Tasmania went through simultaneous extinctions 42,000 years ago. This had never seemed right, because it was long after Aboriginal people arrived, the same time that the Australian environment shifted to the current arid state, says Professor Cooper. The paper suggests that Adams' event could explain a lot of other evolutionary mysteries, like the extinction of Neanderthals and the sudden widespread appearance of figurative art in caves around the world. It's the most surprising and important discovery I've ever been involved in, Cooper said. The perfect storm, the magnetic North Pole, that is, the direction a compass needle points to, doesn't have a fixed location. It usually wobbles close to the North Pole and the northernmost point of Earth's axis. Over time, due to dynamic movements within the Earth's core, just like the magnetic South Pole. Sometimes, for reasons that aren't clear, the magnetic pole's movements can be more drastic. Around 41 to 42,000 years ago, they swapped places entirely, and there is evidence that the South Pole should really be in the north and the North Pole in the south, because the North Pole is 10,000 feet deep. There's no land. The South Pole is 10,000 feet high. If the Earth was held into position by Saturn, it would have been by the poles, and it would have made Earth an egg-shaped, with an indentation in the south and a pulling in the north. So it would make sense that 10,000 feet high should be in the north, which was technically our mythologically Hyperborea, all the North Pole myths. But it fits. But like I said, it was an extraterrestrial event. It didn't come from within. And that is what they're missing. All right, let's see. Earth's magnetic field dropped. According to the team's findings, the most dramatic part was the lead up to the reversal, when the poles were migrating across the Earth. Earth's magnetic field dropped to only 0 to 6% strength during the Adams event. I never heard of the Adams event, do you? Says Professor Turney. We essentially had no magnetic field at all. Our cosmic radiation shield was totally gone. During the magnetic field breakdown, the Sun experienced several grand solar minima, long-term periods of quiet solar activity. I think this is all a guess. That's what I think. Even though the GSM means less activity on the Sun's surface, the weakening of its magnetic field can mean more space weather, like solar flares and galactic cosmic rays. That is true. Could head Earth's way. And it has been, hasn't it? I mean, our magnetic field is weaker. Man-made EMF messes with Earth's magnetosphere. It's insanity what they're doing. Even though GSM means less activity on the Sun's surface, the weakening of its magnetic field can mean more space weather. But the thing is this. If Earth lost its magnetic field, then how did it get it back? By the Sun strengthening, I suppose.
That's why there's a cancer epidemic.
Unfiltered radiation from space ripped apart air particles in Earth's atmosphere,
They just don't
separating electrons and emitting light, a process called ionization. Yeah, when something becomes ionized, it glows.
Ionization.
The ionized air fried the ozone layer, triggering a ripple of climate change across the globe. Well, I don't know. I think that might be cyclical, but who knows? I don't think we've been going around the sun long enough, honestly. But even if we are, what can we do? Sitting around being afraid isn't the answer. We have like 450,000 volts, if I'm not mistaken, above our heads in the ionosphere. And beneath our feet, we have the same exact amount of voltage and negative electrons. And we are in the middle. And that's where the gravity thing, dipole to dipole, comes in. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but it would only make sense that it would be electric. Everything else is. Declassified FBI document states that Nikola Tesla was an alien from Venus. Now, I don't know what this is about. Let's find out. We've gotten no help from the mainstream media regarding him at all. Nikola Tesla is a very well-known scientist that no one ever talks about or teaches in school. I hated that part. Who made numerous inventions and discoveries, such as the Tesla coil, alternating current electricity, neon lights, artificial lighting, X-rays, the rotating magnetic field, just to name a few. His radio technology is actually used in today's computers, smartphones, navigation systems, satellites, missiles, and spaceships. Incredibly, in 1925, he predicted that people would eventually be able to stay connected by seeing and hearing each other, no matter where they were across the planet, by a small device that could fit in a pocket, decades before the smartphone was even created. He had over 1,000 invention patents on record. That included his 1905 patent called The Art of Transmitting Electrical Energy Through the Natural Medium, based on his thoughts that the Earth was an electrical generator that could supply an unlimited amount of electric power. It was obvious Tesla was an incredibly intelligent man who was ahead of his time in regards to his work. In fact, it has been said that his inventions were between 300 and 1,000 years ahead of time, and that the world would be about half a century behind where we are today if it was not for Tesla. This, however, led to some people believing that he was such a unique individual that he didn't even come from our planet. A declassified FBI document called Interplanetary Sessions Newsletter was written on June 14, 1957, which was a good year, and contained some unbelievable claims that Tesla was originally from the planet Venus. Well, if he lives on Venus, he had to be pretty smart because it's hot. How hot is it, you might ask? It is approximately
800 degrees.
It read in part, the space people who have visited the Tesla engineers many times and have told us that Tesla was a Venusian, brought to this planet. Well, if he lives on Venus, he had to be pretty smart because it's hot. How hot is it, you might ask? It is approximately
800 degrees.
It read in part, the space people who have visited the Tesla engineers many times and have told us that Tesla was a Venusian, brought to this planet as a baby in 1856, and left with Mr. and Mrs. Tesla in a remote mountain province in what is now Yugoslavia. Familiar story. That wouldn't be Superman, would it? Isn't it ironic that the real Superman was playing the villain in the first Superman cartoon, Small World? I wonder why the FBI really does have a file. Additionally, a woman named Margaret Storm, who was writing a book on Tesla's life, was given information through a device that the scientist created in 1938 in order to conduct interplanetary communication. She allegedly even had contact with the space people. The theory that Nikola Tesla originally came from Venus and was brought to Earth as a baby is certainly far-fetched, even though many people do believe that there are aliens living right here on Earth, Area 51, for example, and Mount Shasta. But what's even stranger, the FBI had the information in one of their files which ultimately raises even more questions, such as why did the space people reveal Tesla's identity to the FBI? And perhaps even better, did the FBI actually have close contact with extraterrestrials? Or is it just a big heaping pile of smoldering doo-doo? No bullshit. The entire 64-page document can be read here. This looks like a file, June 1457, dear friends. We have not issued lecture by George Van Tassel and Dan Fry in Ballroom of Hotel Diplomat, 43rd Street, New York, 8 p.m. Thursday, June 20th, 1957. Donation $1.25.
I would like to get $1.25.
George Van Tassel operates the Giant Rock, California spaceport and airport, and has been host at 4 annual spacecraft conventions. The author of 2 books, I Rode a Flying Saucer and Into This World and Out Again. Dan Fry is the author of The White Sands Incident. In this book, he tells the story of a trip which he made in a flying saucer from a desert spot. Now, I heard that something new was revealed about Tesla, but then they come out with this nonsense. I'm looking for, it was something about him communicating with Mars, and communication was real. And they sent back these pictures, and one of them is a face. Now, is it a coincidence? I don't know. But you can't ever find anything because they glob up the internet with all kinds of other crap, like how much money the Tesla car makes. And I have something else here that I found about Tesla. While Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments with his magnifying transmitter at Colorado Springs in 1899, he detected coherent signals, which he determined had originated on Mars. Tesla was widely criticized for his astounding claims, yet no one could seriously dispute him. He was a pioneer without peer. No one then has reported constructing a magnifying transmitter or otherwise replicated his experiments. The issue remains unresolved and the mystery unsolved. Tesla revealed no technical details in his pronouncements and publications of that period other than the pertinent patents. His Colorado notebooks were published in the 1980s, but they make no mention of his alleged contact with Mars. Tesla elaborated on the subject, Talking with Planets, in Collier's Weekly, March 1901, which says, as I was improving my machines for the production of intense electrical actions, I was also perfecting the means for observing feeble efforts. One of the most interesting results, and also one of great practical importance, was the development of certain contrivances for indicating at a distance of many hundred miles an approaching storm, its direction, speed, and distance traveled. I believe Velikovsky reported on this as well. It was in carrying on this work that for the first time I discovered those mysterious effects which have elicited such unusual interest. I had perfected the apparatus referred to so far that from my laboratory in the Colorado Mountains, I could feel the pulse of the globe, as it were, noting every electrical change that occurred within the radius of 1,100 miles. I can never forget the first sensation I experienced. I had when it dawned upon me that I had observed something possibly incalculable. Consequences to mankind. I had observed something possibly of incalculable consequences to mankind. I felt as though I were present at the birth of a new knowledge, or the revelation of a great truth. My first observations positively terrified me, as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural. And I was alone in my laboratory at night. I might have had sand on the anode a little bit too much too. But at that time, the idea of these disturbances being intelligently controlled signals did not yet present itself to me. The changes I noted were taking place periodically, and with such a clear suggestion of number and order that they were not traceable to any cause known to me. I was familiar, of course, with such electrical disturbances as are produced by the sun, aurora borealis, and earth currents, and I was as sure as I could be of any fact that these variations were due to none of these causes. The nature of my experiments precluded the possibility of the changes being produced by atmospheric disturbances, as has been rashly asserted by some. It was some time afterward when the thought flashed upon my mind that the disturbances I had observed might be due to an intelligent control. Although I could not decipher their meaning, it was impossible for me to think of them as having been entirely accidental. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another. A purpose was behind these electrical signals. Decades later, on his birthday in 1937, he announced, a lot of people think that he lived like the last 20 or 30 years of his life on a park bench. There's a part of that that's true, but he was also, like Howard Hughes, went into like the Black Ops for probably one of the first ones to work for the government doing science. Things like the Philadelphia experiment. He was involved in that too. I don't know. Decades later, on his birthday in 1938, he announced, I have devoted much of my time during the year past to the perfecting of a new small and compact apparatus by which energy in considerable amounts can now be flashed through interstellar space to any distance without the slightest dispersion. New York Times, Sunday, 11 July, 1937. Tesla never publicly revealed any technical details of his improved transmitter, but in his 1937 announcement, he revealed a new formula showing that the kinetic and potential energy of a body is the result of motion and determined by the product of its mass. Now let's take that. Let's break that down. The potential energy of a body is the result of motion and determined by the product of its mass. So if you got a guy chugging down third base toward home, and the catcher is at the plate, of course, the energy that he would be conducting would be from his running, right? So that's the result of his motion, how much energy he's carrying, according to his mass, how big he is. Okay, I just wanted to maybe break that down, understand it with you. The kinetic and potential energy of a body is the result of motion and determined by the product of its mass and the square of its velocity, how fast he's running, how big he is. Yeah. Let the mass be reduced. The energy is reduced by the same proportion. If it be reduced to zero, the energy is likewise zero for any finite velocity. New York, 12 July, 37. About 40 years later, Arthur Matthews claimed that Tesla had secretly developed the Telescope for the purpose of communicating with Mars. The late Dr. Andrea Puharich met with Matthews and discussed him in an interview, Pyramid Guide, 78. Arthur Matthews came from England. Matthews' father was a laboratory assistant to the noted physicist Lord Kelvin back in the 1890s. Tesla came over to England to meet Kelvin, to convince him that alternating current was more efficient than direct current. Kelvin, at that time, opposed the AC movement in 1902. The Matthews family left England and immigrated to Canada. When Matthews was 16, his father arranged for him to apprentice under Tesla. He eventually worked for him and continued his alliance until Tesla's death in 1943. It's not generally known, but Tesla actually had 2 huge magnifying transmitters built in Canada, and Matthews operated one of them. People mostly know about the Colorado Springs transmitters, and the unfinished one on Long Island. I saw the 2 Canadian transmitters. All the evidence is there. The Telescope is the thing Tesla invented to communicate with beings on other planets. There's a diagram of the Telescope in Matthews' book, The Wall of Light. In principle, it takes in cosmic ray signals. Eventually, the signals are stepped down to audio. Speak into one end, and the signal goes out the other end as a cosmic ray emitter. Light emits, yes. Even if it's a laser, a cosmic ray emitter. That's pretty cool. I wonder whatever happened with it, whatever came of it. Watch, they're probably all using it. Matthew's diagram of the Telescope make minimal electronic sense. No one has ever confirmed the reality of the Telescope. Several years after Tesla announced getting signals from Mars, Marconi also claimed to have heard from an alien radio transmitter. See Marconi always trying to get his beak into the news to be somebody. That's what I see him as. However, Marconi was more easily dismissed by his contemporaries, who claimed that Marconi had received interference from another radio station on Earth. Well, of course they're going to say that. That's their party line. In the 1970s, L.G. Lawrence, field manager of the Ecola Institute, described his communication by accident with ET intelligences. October 1971, while conducting exploratory RBS remote biological sensing experiments in Riverside County, California, our field measurements, organic transducer complex, intercepted a train of apparently intelligent communication signals, tight spacing and discrete pulse intervals, while accidentally allowed to remain pointed at the constellation Ursa Major during a short rest period. The phenomenon prevailed for somewhat over 33 minutes. A somewhat similar phenomenon was observed April 10, 1972. The apparent signals, aside from seemingly growing weaker, appearing to be transmitted at great intervals ranging from weeks to months, possibly years. A faint, coherent, binary-type phenomenon was noted during oral monitoring. Intervals between rapid series of pulse trains ranged from 3 to 10 minutes. Because our equipment is impervious to electromagnetic radiation and found free and found free of internal anomalies, the tentative conclusion of biological type interstellar communications signals has emerged. As a mere audio presentation, the instrumentation lab is unpleasant to listen to. The instrumentation tape is unpleasant to listen to. However, a fascinating degree of enchantment tends to emerge after the tape has been played back 3 or more times. Typically, over a period of weeks, we ascribe this to psychoacoustical adaptation. I agree with that. The tape contains, if you have a noise that's common, eventually you get deaf to it. It's like that radar thing with my TV screen. To know we were getting radiated. The tape contains a short, incremental series of deep, harmonious oscillations. Deep harmonious oscillations resembling nonsense chatter or background modulations. I'd like to hear it. An intelligent character of the overall pulse is applied by discrete spacing patterns, apparent repetitions of sequences, and highly attenuated Gaussian noise. That's going on now, I guess. Maybe it's coming from Perseus, the region of our galaxy. The signals have been heard by the writer for several years, generally range between about 4 to 5 hours right ascension, with a peak intensity near 4.5 hours. The signals appear to be several tones. I wonder, well, I just thought I'd read that on Tesla. Kind of went a little far. That's okay.
Sorry, folks. I'm trying to get it together here. I want to, since we're doing the wild and stuff, I got one left that I didn't put on the playlist, so you have to bear with me for a second here. I gotta go into the home page and dig it up, so it'll just be a minute or two. And all right, I'll be back as soon as I can. Okay, as promised, I didn't know my mic was hot. I would have been talking. Here we go. I got it. I found it. Sorry. Get right on that now. This is good. Grain of salt time. Maybe the shaker. Like the vibe of that. It's nice and salty.
Rama Airlines could be the name given to a powerful fleet of the past, the fleet of a rich prehistoric empire ruling over northern India, known as Rama's Empire. Rama's Empire is widely mentioned in the sacred literature of ancient India. It was highly developed civilization, just like ours, or even more developed at its peak around 12,000 BC. The empire had 7 major capital cities called the 7 Rises, located in northern India. And these cities, comfort and luxury were everywhere. Exquisite foods, exotic zoos, and aviaries, parks and bloom. The ancient descriptions remind of modern cities, and what follows is even harder to swallow. The Rama's planes could travel anywhere on Earth, and even go to the moon or stars. To fly from one city to another, the nobles had individual aircrafts called Vimanas, and also airliners called pushpacks. According to a Jain text of 850 BC, the pushpacks were overhead trolleys used for normal transport and could carry a lot of people from one capital to another. And all this took place in an atmosphere of science fiction from the 60s that makes you want to get a closer look. The show made by the Rishi cities was really weird. Let us hope that sooner or later they will learn also from the light, apart the palaces and big estates equipped with sophisticated pipes. We can also see their factories, geoenergy power plants, lightning sensors, and alignments of small houses for workers. What an amazing modernity for the worlds before the Great Flood. Although they are the most concerned, archaeologists are unaware of these findings. They consider totally absurd. After a lifetime spent exploring the earliest Sanskrit texts, the expert in Indian culture, Elaine Danilou, has made a startling discovery. The Vimanas are described with 2 large diamonds on the front and 2 smaller rubies in the back. Diamonds shine in white, rubies in red. Just like our modern car lights, white headlights, red taillights. Danilou was amazed, and so are we. Even on details like the color of car lights, history is repeating. Enough to confirm the existence of the Akashic records, where everything is written. During the Silver Age, many flying machines crisscrossed the sky, showing the white glare of their headlights or the red glow of their taillights. What a magical show. How could we forget it? So when it was necessary to determine the color of our contemporary vehicles' rear lights, someone has remembered this former wonder. He simply had to make a trip to the great library of the universe. It is very easy indeed. You open the door of dream. You do it every night. Quotes, descriptions, and stories about Vimanas are numerous. Mahabharata and other scriptures of ancient India. You can find an attempt to classify them. The text distinguished 3 kinds of flying machines. Small Vimanas, to go from one city to another. Large pushpakas, to go from one continent to another. And much faster gears to go into space. There's a Rukma Vimana. That's what it looks like. Or artist rendering. Vertical section. Please note, this only applies to the Indian subcontinent, because at that time, many other flying machines were moving everywhere. In the Middle East, for example, King Solomon did not despise the joys of flight. In Egypt and among the pre-Olmecs, it was also a custom of the gods. Among the Ashvin people, there was another kind of flying machine, the Veilixi, which could fly and sail, even under the sea. Thanks to this technological superiority, the Ashvins finally defeated the Ramas. Who were these Ashvins? Who were this rival high-tech people? Why not the Atlanteans? Then the Mahabharata would tell us the war of all against all. The war of the Atlanteans against the Ramas, of Zeus against Hecatonshires of the Anunnaki, against the great planners, the Elohim, a war of the West against the East, already probably doubled with a religious war. Already the Ramas worshipped a Trinitarian deity, and the Atlanteans themselves were strict followers of the One, as evidenced by the U.S. clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. Notice to handyman. To build your Vimana, please follow the ancient manual. Strong and durable must be the body of the Vimana, like a great flying bird, made of light material. Inside must be put the Mercury engine with its metallic heating device underneath. Thanks to the latent power of Mercury, which allows movement, a man sitting inside may travel long distances in the sky. Nowadays, the use of Mercury on that purpose has been totally forgotten until the TR-3B, and that makes our bad scientists laugh. Yeah. The movements of the Vimana, I always think there's an R in there. The V, it's V-I mana, like a mage's mana. Vimana, are such that it can climb vertically, descend vertically, tilt forward and back. With the help of machines, human beings can fly in the air and eventually return to the ground. No one could invent out of nothing so compelling technical details. Studying these descriptions, U.S. researcher Richard Thompson makes a fundamental distinction between the two kinds of Vimanas, corresponding to two different technological approaches. All reality exists in the mind. The outer phenomenon, that which appears, is only its outer expression. The visible universe is the reflection of the invisible. Plato. Interesting. Go over to the two different types of technologies. Vimanas are flying machines which are often mentioned in the sacred texts of ancient India. The American researcher Richard Thompson makes a fundamental distinction between two kinds of Vimanas, which correspond to two different technological approaches, two different epochs too. The Vimanas fall into two categories. One, some gears made by man, flying with wings as birds, and two, non-profiled structures that fly in a mysterious manner and are generally not made by human beings. The machines in Category 1 are described mainly in medieval Sanskrit texts that speak of architecture, automata, war machine, and other mechanical devices. They are made of wood and fly thanks to wings like our modern aircraft. Although these ancient vehicles are also called Vimanas, most Vimanas does not resemble planes at all. Those in Category 2 date back to ancient time. Mentioned in ancient Sanskrit literature, they have much in common with UFOs, and the pilot who flew them had the same powers as the pilots of UFOs. The flying machine of Salva, a former Indian king, is an interesting example of Vimana. He had acquired it by Maya Devana, coming from a planetary system called Taltal, T-A-L-T-A-L. The Hyperborean physician Barris was said to have a flying arrow. The Mahabharata gives us the following of this story through the mouth of its hero, Krishna. The cruel Sava arrived on the flying chariot, Subha, that could go anywhere, up which he killed many young Vrishny and devastated fiercely all city parks. I guess he just liked to climb in and put on his goggles and his probably, maybe dual 50 cals or something, or maybe even laser beams. And just like the guy on that movie, Full Metal Jacket, he's shooting the Vietnamese on the helicopter. He says, if they run, they're VC. If they don't run, they're well-trained VC. Just a crazy person. Up which he killed many young Vrishny. His Saba hung in the sky with a good head start. He'd throw rockets, missiles, sabers, swords, battle axes, spears, with 3 blades, flamethrowers, continuously. The sky seemed to have 100 suns, 100 moons, and 100 myriads of stars. There was no more day, no more night, and compass did not work anymore. The aircraft of Salva was very mysterious, said Krishna. It was so extraordinary that sometimes it seemed to multiply in all parts of the sky, and other times it was nowhere. A kind of MHD, an interplan. The aircraft was sometimes visible and sometimes invisible, and the warriors of the Yadu dynasty were taken aback at the performance of this unit. Sometimes they saw the plane on the ground, sometimes in the sky, sometimes placed on top of a hill, and sometimes floating on the water. The wonderful plane was flying in the sky like fireworks. It could not stand still for any moment. Those who have seen UFOs describe them the same way. What an amazing consistency. Probably the giant survivors, right? The Vimanas were powered by light yellow fuel, as well as a heart powered by a mixture containing mercury. The Vedas, ancient Indian poems considered the most ancient Indian texts, describe the Vimanas as having various shapes and sizes, and their designs varying according to their utilities. The Indian emperor Ashoka was so convinced in the authenticity of these writings that he devoted much of his reign to protect his people from their harmful effects. On this purpose, he created the secret society of the 9 unknown men, 9 great Indian scientists, with the task of cataloging sciences mentioned in old texts and not conceal them from the public. He trembled at the thought that the advanced sciences described in ancient texts bring the devastation of his empire, a fate similar to the one that killed former Rama Empire, the Rukma Vimana. To conceal these ancient sciences to the public, it is feared that the 9 unknown have destroyed many texts considered too dangerous. Maybe they have done well, since at every age people do love playing with fire. Formerly, until the 7th century BC, in Babylon, there were also airplanes. The privilege of using a flying machine is great. The knowledge of flight is among the most ancient of our inheritance. A gift from what is higher. From whom? Atlantean astronauts? Gods of Sumer? Scholars of Tiwanaku? The manuscript does not say. It only adds, we got it from them in order to save many lives. Would the Tower of Babel be a control tower? Edward Casey saw that the Atlanteans had air traffic controllers, thus control towers. Why not also on Babel? I thought of something that, I forgot. Doggone it. It'll come back to me. The history of ancient aircrafts. The secret history of ancient aircrafts. Ignorance is not the lack of knowledge, but the lack of self-knowledge. Without self-knowledge, there is no intelligence. Jiddu Krishnamurti. We're off to Secret History of Ancient Aircrafts. We're going to follow this to the end. Secret History of Ancient Aircraft. My beloved flying carpet. From the flying carpets of the Arabian Nights to the ardent wheels of the prophet Ezekiel, our past loves, air travel. There are countless myths and legends featuring flying men, jinns, brooms, carts, and carpets. All stories usually relegated to the Department of Nonsense. They want us to believe that all our ancestors, whatever their origin, spent their time telling lies just to mislead us. Moreover, they all tell the same lies. What nerve? Either historians are pedants, or they are pulling our legs, or both. Cover them with shame. Ancient flying machines are a reality. We all know, except historians. I still remember the father of the atom bomb, Oppenheimer, was asked if that was the first time a nuclear device was detonated, or something to that effect, in history. And his response was, well, yes, in current times, of course. So, I don't know. There's there. Perhaps he had privy to inside baseball. On the controversial subject of flying saucers, Jung wrote, the apparent lack of gravity of flying saucer is certainly a difficult to digest story. But it is told modern physics has recently made so many discoveries that, in effect, it's a miracle. Why could not more advanced people from other planets have found a way to remove the gravity and reach the speed of light, or even more? Nuclear physics has created in the minds of the layperson uncertainty of judgment that goes far beyond that of physics, which makes it appear as possible things that could have been considered stupid and exaggerated. Well, you know, our limit to what we believe is, I think gets desensitized to exposure, right? So, I mean, if we see certain things, we can make claims that someone might think is crazy because we saw it, but someone else hasn't, so they don't have that concept, and that's what makes it really hard. I think that every branch of science is lying to us. Flying saucers can therefore easily be seen as a new miracle of physics, but plasma physics are next gen, and be accredited as such. I remember here, not without discomfort, the time when I was convinced that something that was heavier than air could not fly. Shortly after, I had some discomfort with me to face the facts, and it doesn't give the name. It's got a picture of Freud here. He probably just forgot to write his name, maybe, I don't know. He's a hell of a writer. I mean, he is a hell of a writer, and so ready for the electric universe. He can keep your interest. Chinese mythology speaks of a legendary people, Chai Kung or Jigung, who moved in air cars. In the 17th century, Jesuit missionaries managed to obtain an ancient Chinese text entitled Documents of Scholars. It reveals that Chan Hing, great astronomer and engineer of the Han Dynasty, fashioned a wooden bird whose stomach contained a mechanism allowing it to fly close to 0.9 miles. Another book, written around 320 AD by the alchemist and mystic Ho Hung, seems for its part to describe propellers. Some have made the wood of the juju, flying cars equipped with leather straps connected to rotating blades that put the machine in motion. At first glance, China seems to be at the origin of modern aeronautics, with the invention of gunpowder. The ancient Chinese also knew how to lock the powder in a tube. The Chinese powder also can propel rockets or cannonballs. The Chinese have used rocket propulsion to all kinds of arrows, grenades, and even iron bombs, very similar to ours. They are credited with production in the 11th century of the first two-stage rocket. It is described as a fire dragon, which while flying set fire to arrows and spat them through the mouth. In 1232, the inhabitants of Kaifeng repelled the Mongols thanks to the thunder shaking the sky. It was an iron bomb that a chain projected in the midst of enemies, as well as arrows of flying fire that wreaked chaos in the Mongolian cavalry. The jet propulsion in our story rockets would therefore find here their source. Other Chinese inventions, unless we have to seek an even more distant origin, for several testimonials show that bombs and gunpowder were in use in the time of Christ, and even well before. In the 3rd century, a man called Marcus, or Mark, the Greek, wrote Liber Ignium, a book where he explains how to get explosive powder by mixing 1 pound of sulfur, 2 of charcoal, and 6 of saltpeter, venomous and Indians' UFOs. You can also find traces of explosive weapons in a much more remote antiquity, the terrifying arsenal developed by the Rama Empire. Several millennia BP, before present, speaks for itself, and even before that, it was worse in terms of weapons of mass destruction. The same empire of Rama is known for its flying machines, called phenemas or pushpakas, whose descriptive evoke furiously aircrafts and rockets. Some Indian texts, such as the Mahabharata, even describe spherical gears very similar to UFOs. An abundant literature describes the modes of propulsion and types of engines that equipped these very ancient UFOs. But the ancient flight and aviation were not the monopoly of Asia. We find eloquent traces in America. Peru, lines drawn for thousands of years the Nazca Plateau, attract the attention of the curious, although very few Western archaeologists are interested. Don't you think that these lines and figures were drawn to be seen from the sky? Should we see signals and guidance for use of space travelers? Anyway, not far away, the mountain has been leveled and flattened to form a long, flat track that evokes an airstrip. From Middle East to China, throughout the route taken by armies of Rama, the conqueror, or the teenager killer, are found curious, truncated mountains that tradition calls Solomon Thrones. Legends claim that this magnificent emperor landed his flying machine on these flattened mountains when he traveled on his land. Guess whom Solomon gets his plane from? Did I write that Jung lived at the birth of flying machines? I was totally wrong. They have existed long before.
because the ultrasound is extremely important. One of the people who realized that was Dr. Royal Rife. In 1931, he invented the microscope. And for the first time, someone was able to see live viruses. This is the structure of the viruses. Incidentally, they have a shape of pyramid. Now, of course, the microbes, that includes viruses and bacteria and some bad cells, organisms, they are the base of all our diseases, including cancer. Now, Dr. Rife not only invented the microscope, but also he invented the machine to produce the ultrasound. And then he was checking the effects of different frequencies on viruses. And then he was able to find the frequency that kills viruses.
The planet Venus has got to be the craziest planet in the solar system in matters of art. Like speaking about, like, well, let me just show you. This planet, it's like it's got all these murals all over it that are like scenes from hell. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I don't know if you've noticed a picture of that creature that I have on one of my videos, the cover. That is a picture from Venus, and these are all taken from the surface of Venus. And if you lack any imagination at all, I suppose that you wouldn't see these things. But even just a little bit of imagination, I mean, it doesn't really take much imagination to make out the characters that are painted all over this planet. You know, I just can't help but think, oh man, this isn't a coincidence, you know. I mean, that's the major question. Are we here as a result of a bunch of coincidences? Or are we here for a purpose that has a much more grand ending than just this? I don't know, you know, it seems like that has to be the case. That's like what Fred Hoyle says, you know, when you're really at the end of the cosmology quest. If you really look at it, there's no way that this can all just be an accident. No way.
Was this worked out by somebody, or was it, did it just happen by chance? Which is really the same thing as saying, did the universe happen by chance? And I have to say, when I look at it, it doesn't look to me at all like chance.
And these are, look at these pictures. I mean, look at this. This one right here really gets me. I just saw this too the other day. Today, actually. I was looking at Venus. I mean, that, I don't know, I couldn't paint a girl in agony any better than that. That's art. And if you look at all the things that surround her, now my oldest son says that he sees her as like an angel of death with wings. I don't see that. I see a guy's face here with a big body and his arm coming around her, and she's like, ah, and there's her hand. It's like she's being dragged into a hole. You see that? I just recently noticed this face right here, too. I didn't see that before. I'm just now noticing that for the first time. That's even more prominent. I mean, gosh, and this looks like some kind of hideous creature. There's something coming out of a hole right there. There's two front legs. This is like, it's like this all over the planet. And then you got this one here. What is this? It looks like, I don't know, some creature towards something. And then there's something right here. And there's that guy right there. Oh, I wish the planet wouldn't have got, because every picture of it shows a different kind of, it's almost like ever-changing murals. And you can just go all over the whole planet and see this stuff. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. You may have already, now my oldest,
That's pretty much what I was trying to get across. I mean, this is a That looks like a face and hair, and I can see where the wings are now. I couldn't see them before. I mean, that just, I mean, God, that is so, to just be, you know, some random burn spots, it's pretty good. You know, that's why the ancients thought they were gods in the skies, because you almost want to think they're alive there too. But we know they're not. It's just freaking ass good pareidolia, I suppose. It's a shame.
The sun says that
Louisiana and places like that where I come.
there's a couple of, I don't know, something kind of creatures. There's a guy, look at that. He's got a nice beard. A million years ago. It's considered the jewel of the solar system. It's not because of its color. That's the only boring thing about the planet, or star, I should say. Now this picture right here, there's two of them. There's one with Quetzalcoatl, I think, or of Aztec. And then we got this one from the Greeks of the man. Is the snake, or the, whatever that is, eating the man, or is he spitting him out? I've often wondered that. Carl Sagan estimates that super technological starmen with interstellar spaceships may have visited Earth some 5,000 times since life first proliferated on Earth some 500 million years ago. Can you imagine what would have happened to Velikovsky if he would have said that? Here's a very interesting situation from Lloyd PYE. I don't know what to think about the Anunnaki part, but he makes sense. Check this out and let me know what you think in the comments.
Mitochondrial DNA. We found out in the in the 70s that if we checked the mitochondrial DNA of our females, we could find out how far the line went back. So they said, okay, great. Let's find out if we broke from the common ancestor at 8 million years ago or 5 million years ago. So they took samples of DNA, mitochondrial DNA, which only passes down from females, from women all over the world, and what they found out was, lo and behold, it's not 8, it's not 5 million years ago. It's all the way down to 200,000 years ago. To everyone's great surprise, we don't exist as a species according to our mitochondrial DNA prior to approximately 200,000 years ago. What a surprise. So what the anthropologists have to say is, well, there was some little group somewhere, some little cluster somewhere, and all the others like us died out, and that little cluster somehow around 200,000 years ago, that little bottleneck somehow created the whole species. Garbage. Garbage. More garbage. Next slide. What they found is not that we existed, not only existed 200,000 years ago, that where we came from was South Africa. Not only when we came, but where we came. The oldest of us, the oldest of our females come from Southern Africa. Guess what the Sumerians said? We were created in Southern Africa. So they're writing this 4,000 years ago. They're calling it on the nose. They're saying it around 200,000 years ago in Southern Africa. And that's what our geneticists are turning up. Now, just for laughs, you can imagine how this Newsweek cover went over in the Deep South, in Louisiana and places like that where I come from. They tried to make these blacks look as white as they could, hoping they could skate down in the South, but of course it ticked off blacks everywhere and they caught it coming and going. But they did tell the truth. Okay, next slide. This is another indication of some tampering with the cerebral cortex. Is the deeply convoluted surface region of the brain that is most strongly linked to intelligence. That's this stained part on the outside. Strip it off a rat, postage stamp. Monkey, postcard. Chimpanzee, typing, 1 sheet of typing paper. Human, 4 sheets of typing paper. What the heck happened there? Our closest kin, supposedly. And not only that, we only use maybe half a sheet, maybe 1 sheet. We don't know, but we know we use a very small portion of the brain we've been given. How do we know that? Because of the work with savants. It used to be called idiot savants. And in the damage to their good sheet, they get a little like a spot of light here, spot of light here, spot of light here, somewhere in the remainder, and that'll be art, math, painting, music. You've all seen them. You've all seen their genius so far surpasses our regular geniuses, it's absurd. So we know that since there's over 100 of them, all of our brains have this full capacity, but we, the normal ones, are only using a small part for some reason. Why? The Anunnaki. What do you want your slave to be? Smart as you? No. Smart, but not too smart. Able to take instructions. Here, go here, do this, and come back and tell me when you're done. You give them just enough. But they had to give us their bodies and their brains. Why? Because they didn't want their slaves looking like this guy. Or the hominoids. They wanted it to look like themselves. Why? So they could have some women. There weren't enough women. They were mostly men. So they had a deadline and they went to work to create that slave and servant. Next slide. And they did it how? Genetic manipulation. Genes just the way we do it. You can cut, you can take something out, you can put anything in, and at this level you can put fish into fowl, plant into animal, anything. It all is the same at that level. Why? Because it's all made out of the same 4 base pairs and the same 20 amino acids. It's interchangeable. It's almost as if it's planned. It's almost as if somebody wants the ability to just mix and match and make things to suit the environment when the environment calls for it. Time to do it right. They had a deadline. They were dealing with an insurrection. They had a deadline. So they had to crank them out as fast as they could. They're making a slave. Do they care if they're making mistakes? No. Do they care if it affects 1 in 100? No. Do they care if it affects 1 in 10? No. It's a slave. They do not care. So they left a lot of mistakes in us, a lot of genetic defects. And here you've got our full complement of 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs, and you have 28 of our major genetic defects, but we have over 4,000. How does a species collect over 4,000 genetic defects in only 200,000 years when creatures that have been on the earth for sure for millions of years don't have even a couple of handfuls, if that many? And furthermore, how do we as a species get genetic defects that will kill you before you can reach the age of maturity and pass it on into the gene pool? How'd that get into the gene pool? We got a couple of dozen of those. The only way is if it was done with poor genetic cutting and splicing and the mistakes were just left there. It's the only way. This is something that, of course, is never talked about, but which every geneticist in the world is fully aware. Okay? Next slide. Now, this is a comparison of orangutan, gorilla, chimpanzee, human, and as you see, as we're always told, gee, our DNA is an awful lot like them. Well, because it's going to be like primate. If we had a hominoid up here, it would probably be even closer. But the key to this slide is not that, not the closeness, because if you know what you're doing, you can take just a few genes and make some really amazing changes. The problem is what the Anunnaki faced when they wanted to make that slave and the servant. You have to assume they have 46 chromosomes, because we have 46 chromosomes, the only primate with 46 chromosomes. All of the primates have 48. How did that happen? How could we be so much better and have lost 2 chromosomes? It's an awful lot of DNA. How could that happen? Doesn't make sense, does it? And yet we're told we're primates even though we don't have primate bones, we don't have primate muscles, we don't have primate skin, we don't have primate hair patterns, we're thick on front, light on back. We don't have that. We don't have primate heads, we don't have primate brains, we don't have primate faces, we don't have primate anything. We're not primates. So the Anunnaki have to do an important thing. They have to somehow find a way to make a zygote, a living thing, to begin this process. You've got to take a 48 chromosome creature, a 46 chromosome creature, and you've got to make them match up. How do you do that? You're going to have 24 in the sperm, 23 in the egg, 23 in the egg, 24 in the sperm. Can you take away a whole chromosome from the 48? No. Can you take away, can you add a chromosome to yours? Oh, if I didn't say it, they're using the creature of Earth. They say in the tablets, we will use the creature of Earth as a model. They wanted us to be genetically a little bit better adapted to this planet than they were. So they had that 48-46 problem. How could you do it? Sounds impossible, doesn't it? The only way is to take 2 of those chromosomes on the 48 and fuse them together so that all the chromosomal material remains, but it now only takes up 1 space in the connecting process with the 23. You with me on that? Let me see some heads. Okay, next slide. Here we go, the 2nd and 3rd chromosome of the orangutan, gorilla, chimp, but look at ours. Fused. Fused. And scientists say, well, somehow that happened in nature. Nature did that. BS. Nature couldn't do that. That is genetic engineering. Chimp, but look at ours. Fused. Fused. And scientists say, well, somehow that happened in nature. Nature did that. BS. Nature couldn't do that. That is genetic engineering.
Is Britain's largest radio telescope, the Chilbolton Observatory. And here it was that the greatest sensation in the crop circle history was to appear in the fields right in front of the telescope. On the morning of 14th of August 2001, a formation was discovered which was different from any other previously seen. From the ground, it looked like a tangled mess, wisps of crop spread around in no system. However, in the evening, with growing shadows, a picture appeared, unmistakably that of a face. That picture represented a whole new technique, a screen technique, the same that's used for printing a picture on paper. 3 days later, the face was joined by something that looked like a data strip. Rows of counters made out of standing and flattened crop. But soon, an astonishing similarity is discovered. In 1974, the astronomer Carl Sagan composed a message that NASA sent into space from the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. Binary figures which constituted a graphic code presenting key factors about humans and the planet we live on. 27 years later, an identical pattern appears in a crop field right in front of a similar radio telescope. However, on closer inspection, it seemed to show that the code contained some fundamental differences. Sagan's message explained our calculation system, the dominant chemical substances within the elements that create life on Earth, about our DNA code, humans' height and quantity, and that we live on the third planet in our solar system, and lastly, a sketch of our radio telescope. The message received described the same calculation system, but that silicon is most dominant in life forms in contrast to carbon. The drawing also clearly shows a humanoid figure with large head in relation to its body. It's also explained that they have an extra string in their DNA, are approximately 4 feet tall, inhabit the third, fourth and fifth planets in their solar system, and have a population of around 21.3 billion. Underneath, the telescope has been replaced by something more complex. 1 year earlier, a strange crop circle had appeared in the same place. Is this the same illustration as in the sender's code? Is this the correspondence radio telescope? If this is not an extremely clever and well-calculated joke conducted by humans, is it a serious response from an alien civilization?
Chilbolton crop formations really gave new life to the speculations of who is behind this. Is it aliens? Where do they come from? And what is their purpose of this type of communication?
The following year, very nearly on the same day, a new picture appears that gives new force to the alien theory, this time in Crabwood, near the town of Winchester in Hampshire. Once again, we see a face, but this time there is an unmistakable resemblance to something extraterrestrial. The picture also contains a print, somewhat similar to that of a CD, with something that appears to be a coded message. This formation also has a new type of design, this time with horizontal line patterns of variable thickness, similar to that of a TV picture. The message on the disc is similar to a spiral band built up of many boxes. But data expert Paul PYE manages to decipher the message.
And I had to enlarge the disc quite substantially on the computer and run some image analysis over it to make it clear so that I could see what was a standing tuft and what was flattened. And while I was doing this, I noticed that every so often there was almost a mistake in the diagram. It was like there was a tuft, where the little square tuft, it had done sort of half size. I thought that's a bit odd, and it seemed fairly regular. I was going round, and I sort of counted up, and it was sort of literally every sort of 8 bytes or whatever. And I thought, oh, 8 bytes, and you know, from the computer side, it's obviously some sort of binary code. So then I did the straightforward thing. I just converted it into ASCII, which is the standard sort of computer language that you encode the alphabet in. And of course, I then started to get words forming out, and I thought, oh, you know, I'm getting somewhere here. So I then did the whole thing for the whole lot. And got this message.
The message is in English and reads as follows. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. Many have been surprised by this message. Are there aliens with such faces that we should be aware of? Or is this a picture of the sender? Does this indicate the start of actual close contact with neighbors in the universe?
Gigantic men, the Adites, are remembered by the Arabians as a great civilized race. They are depicted as men of gigantic stature. Their strength was equal to their size, and they easily moved great blocks of stone. This is part 3 of our trilogy. Prepare yourselves. This is the wildest one. Figured it was best to go out with a bang. Of course, you know this is all in good fun, but we are seriously looking at this scenario to see if there's any there. So bravely we soldier on. They came from the sky on a planet-sized mothership that housed their wandering population. With factories, labs, workshops, power plants, everything to survive in the hostile vastness. They were bipedal, and apart from their scaly skin, they looked a lot like us. Their mission? To develop the wild planets, sons of serpents. Their appearance was that of snakes. They belonged to the mighty reptile people. Their vast family, that of the dinosaurs, had ruled this planet for hundreds of millions of years, giving them a large advantage over the mammals, our ancestors. They had the right to be here as much as us, if not more. They were back home. I call them the former gods, or the terraformers.
Their culture was extremely ancient and their knowledge almost endless. They, or other like-minded visitors, began planning this planet infinite time ago, when it was still very young. I have been able to access the age of their civilization at over 4 billion years. The development of Terra started so long ago, has continued until now, respecting the same specifications. If the terraformers belong to different species, they have in any case acted in perfect concert for billions of years, except for the terrible divine wars in which have ravaged the earth on several occasions. The serpents, allied no doubt to another humanoid species,
are wise designers of our human lineage. According to many mythologies, Hindu, Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Mayan, etc., other intelligent species have ruled this planet before us. Our humanity would be the 5th or the 6th. For a long time, our masters have watched over the development of the human species.
The Bible and other mythological accounts tell us about this distant time when the gods walked among men, endowed with a longevity ranging from several centuries to 2,000 years. Their knowledge and intelligence was much more developed than ours. Necessarily, suddenly we understand better the educational role they were able to play vis-a-vis our first ancestor. They were less fond of social relationships or emotional life than we are, preferring the intellect to the emotional. Suddenly, some humans found them heartless, without guts, without emotion. But the serpents thought most humans totally stupid. I must say they weren't entirely wrong. The human race has a large number of nerds, assholes, clumsy, farters, barjots, guns, deladders, and also many more idiots than it should. This being the case, I bet that there is the same proportion of loosens in reptiles, however developed they may be. Terrifying, humiliating, degrading. After a more or less long lapse of time until historic times, we see the reappearance of small groups of humanoid snakes, which immediately become masters in the countries where they settle. They are called the Serpent King. For me, they are the same. They watch over us. They watch us. That's quite normal, since we are theirs. In any case, the behavior of our ancestors was the same towards snakes, whether they were gods or kings. The superior intelligence of the reptilians enabled them to transform humans into cattle, labor, and sometimes slaves. They ruled over our species for many millennia, for so long that our great ancestors gave them innate submission. In the presence of the Serpent Kings, terror paralyzed the men who, adopting humiliating attitudes, degrading behavior, shameful manners. The Serpent Gods made a reign of terror until the day they returned home in the system of Alcor, Big Dipper. This does not prevent some of them from coming back to see us from time to time, the Serpent Kings. In any case, it is a possible scenario from our distant past. As soon as I see a link, I have to click on it. Alcor, Ursa Major. It's a pretty cool picture. They came from the planet which is pronounced our or. If you read
Alan Elliott's The Golden Tongue,
and his exciting considerations, you learned a few bits of this original language that we have transmitted. The former gods, who are also called ancient astronauts. Another link, you have to go there. The Golden Tongue. They came from the planet like Urals. They had a mission. They came to Earth. They lived in a wandering planet with all the equipment needed for terraforming wild planets. They came often. Their motherships were called Atlantis, the name of their star, because it has one. I have already identified their original constellation, Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Come on. It turns out that this constellation has more than 100 stars. Not all of them visible to the naked eye, but it makes many possible origins for the ancient gods. A friend researcher gave me this precious information. In the Native America indigenous teachings, the Turtle Mountain Chippewa teach that they came from a star in the center of Ursa Major, which is not visible to the eye. Discovered the same fact using another approach. Anyway, let's focus on the invisible stars.
2 stars of the Big Dipper caught my attention for purely intuitive reasons. They are very close. Each is double, even triple. The Arabs have named them Alcor and Mizar since ancient times. Mizar is located 78 light years from us, and Alcor 3 light years further. Zeta Ursa Majoris is a star in the constellation of the Great Bear and is the second star from the end of the chariot. Its traditional name, Mizar or Mirza, comes from the Arabic Mizar, meaning belt. It has an apparent magnitude of plus 2.27 and is of type A1V. But there is another mythical tale that I submit to your sagacity. He, too, can claim a certain plausibility. No doubt the 2 versions have coexisted according to the eras and countries, and according to the character of local deities. As far as I know, the Serpent Kings have appeared since proto-history. They ruled this part of the world for many millennia. But they were enlightened rulers, keen to pass on the most of their immense knowledge. They educated the Olmecs in the secrets of astronomy and space navigation. They educated the Toltecs, like warriors of light, to become astral slayers. They are at the origin of all cultures which succeeded one another in Mesoamerica, to whom they learned architecture, mathematics, cosmology, fine arts, and many crafts. Wherever they have gone, they have brought about peace, development, and prosperity. They brought the benefits of a hyper-developed civilization to wild lands that human tribes viewed as hunting grounds or battlefields. Mayan snakes. Why are these great civilizers called snakes? Because they were dangerous. However, I don't believe their bite was fatal, nor that they were crawling on their stomachs. A favorite thesis of neo-archaeology features the first evolved beings on this planet, nicknamed the reptilians. Well, the Purple Dawn was conducive to reptiles, that's for sure. It may be that evolved beings have come from another star to bring some of their blessings here. These are the serpent gods, of whom mythologies speak. 2 Mayan tombs have been found in Guatemala with hieroglyphics relating to the dynasty of the Serpent Kings. This family ruled for decades over the Mayan Empire 1,300 years ago and used snake heads as an emblem. The carved frieze
makes particular mention of 5 leaders who, according to archaeologists, would be the founding fathers of this dynasty, which has now become legendary. Among the Mayans is not a question of gods, but kings, and relatively recent kings. In the Mayan language, serpent is said Khan, to be compared with the Hindi serpent Ka, and the cursed son of the Bible, Cain, who could well also be to the snake people, to the order of the reptilians. So Cain and Abel, the 2 sons of the first man, Adam, would represent the reptilian branch of the human branch, which suggests many other scenarios as to the true origin of our species, which will remain an inextricable mystery for a long time to come. If the serpent gods are mentioned in many mythological sources, serpent kings are rarer and more recent. Outside of the Maya country, they are found in the Middle East, the Assyrian vulture snakes, in India, and perhaps elsewhere in the Far East, Korea or Japan, for example. Snakes of India. The Naga, or serpent in Sanskrit, is a mythical being in Hinduism, but the word also basically means serpent. The Nagas, which is Sagan backwards, in religion guard the treasures of nature. Just as dragons keep treasures deep in their caves, now extinct.
Dragons are flying reptiles.
Cousins of snakes and lizards. On the other hand, at the time of this writing, I cannot say whether the dragons included in their ranks beings as evolved as the reptilians who created us. Given the absence of a mythological source, I lean for the negative. Many temples in India worship a serpent statue. The serpent is also a symbol of Kundalini. Fertility and immortality are also their powers. The reptilians placed awakening at the top of their concerns. When the serpent of the Garden of Eden offers the first human couple to taste the knowledge of good and evil, it helps them to grow by offering them awakening. And that does not please God the Father any more than the priests of today, like the awakened ones and the mystics. It is true, the latter seriously comprise the schemes of the former. Think so. They are telling everyone the truth. A shame. As for the pastors, they are no better. Them whose title makes the keepers of a flock of bleeding sheep. Amen. Rama, Lama, and Buddha. The motif of the Serpent King, Mukalinda, housing the Buddha under his hood, is a favorite theme in Buddhist art, including outside India. Should we conclude that the teaching of the historical Buddha came from the very ancient wisdom of our reptilian fathers? Which is not to displease me, I who believe that the first Buddha, true initiator of Buddhism, was called Rama, child of Hyperborea, heir to the multi-millennial wisdom of the reptilians. Rama and the Asians pronounce Lama, hence Lamanism, which is Tibetan Buddhism. In my opinion, the ancestor of Buddhism to the old religion of the Bons, Prince of Serpents. I come across another quote which reinforces this conviction. The great sage Nagarjuna, Prince of Serpent, was initiated by the Snake Kings in the certainty that all is empty, sunya. It is he who thus brought to men the completed Buddhist teachings, those of the Mahayana. It is true that his name, Prince of Serpents, does not refer to his reptilian origin, but to this talent for reasoning. Unbelievable was his skill at puffing the head of his audience who nodded under hypnosis. Well, that's what they say. Nothing prevents from imagining that this dialectical talent came to him from his serpentine inheritance, son of a king of the serpents. The Prince of Serpents was also a brilliant orator and a manipulator of the first order. Where's the bug? For me, it holds until proven otherwise. I remain convinced that Homo reptilis persisted among us until a quite close period. But there's also the fish people, too. Don't forget. Maybe there are still some. When we look at some old politicians, we can ask the questions. Vice and debauchery can be read on their faces, where under the grazing light, scales can be seen on their dry, scaly skins. With age, what we are inside can be clearly read on the face. What we are inside can be clearly read. Flying snakes. But there is something else to add about these critters. I quote, in Nepal, the Naga are linked to Amogasti, of which they adorn the canopy, and to Dekara, of which they are the vehicle of the gods. That must be taken literally. We're the reptilians, the pilots of flying devices of their manufacture, aviator snakes, at the orders of the new gods, who then had control of the airspace. What about space? In any case, one thing is certain. The gods owned vehicles, all kinds of vehicles. So we can imagine that the snakes themselves are a vehicle for the gods. Maybe because they were flying snakes, like dragons. Frankly, gods riding flying snakes that must have had one of those faces. Besides, snakes with wings are dragons, right? No need to look any further. The gods arrived on Earth perched on their dragons, which caused panic among our ancestors. We understand them. With a single jet of flames, these dirty beasts could slay a village. This is like it's Saturn theory personified, almost. In Nepal, the Naga are linked to the Amogasti, with which they adorn the canopy, to the Dekara, of which they are the vehicle of the gods. Maybe because they were flying snakes, like dragons. Frankly, gods riding flying snakes that must have had one of those faces. Besides, snakes with wings are dragons, right? No need to look any further. The end. And you know, he has another one too. It's called the Flying Serpent. Serpent people. Feather serpent of America, vulture snake of Sumer, tempter serpent of the Bible. Who is this serpent people found in all mythologies? The first Chinese emperors, successors to the legendary Emperor Yao. They were descended from dragons. In India, high caste families still believe in their ancestors being snake gods, called Nagas. The Dogons of Mali claim that their extraordinary astronomical knowledge came to them from their ancestral reptilian celestial aspect, the Nomos. The Egyptians had their snake god, Neph. Neph and the pharaohs were often depicted with snakes, usually cobras. The Phoenicians had Agatha diamond serpent. The cultures of Central America worshipped their creator god, Quetzalcoatl, who was also known as Venus. The winged serpent as Bahalinkanga, the feathered serpent of the Hopi Indians. Followers of voodoo have a serpent god they call Damballa Wedo. The Hebrews have Nak Houston, the brazen serpent. Houston, we had a problem. The ancient god of the British Isles, called Hu, the master of the dragon world. first altar of the Cyclops in Athens was dedicated to Ops, the god snake, OPS. I like other people's stuff. Indigenous Australians also have their myth of Waggle, a god serpent. According to the Gnostics, the snakes are our instructors. They're called demiurges who shaped our bodies, but not our soul, which is not theirs, because it is uncreated. Now, what the heck do they mean by uncreated? We'll get back to it. We are born from light, just like them, but our terrestrial vehicle, this triple body of flesh and spirit, we owe it to them. The Gnostic philosophy was born in the early Christian era, within the Mediterranean basin, mainly in Egypt, heir of the ancient religion of Isis. Mysteries. To its followers, man is the emanation of the source of all things, and inherit a piece. See Notre Peri Promethi of this creative perfection. On the contrary, our triple body has been shaped by harmful beings, usurpers who have proclaimed themselves gods. The famous Archon, Yahweh, or Yahweh, is regarded by the Gnostics as the chief of the Archons, the great demiurge, the most evil creature. In the 4th century, confrontation between the Gnostics and the fathers of the church was violent and merciless. Most of the texts were destroyed before the discovery of Nag Hammadi's famous scrolls of 1945. What was known about Gnosis was limited to the reviews of heresy hunters in the early days of Christianity, which is very unfortunate because Jesus himself was a Gnostic. He said that you find heaven within. Paradoxically, to save the religion of Christ, the fathers of the church had to invent a charming character they named Jesus. Before that, Christ, it was Emperor Constantine. In the time of Jesus, Kali Yuga was only 2,000 years old. Now it is twice that age. Very little truth floats in an ocean of errors. Let us get back to those harmful beings who have shaped us, since this is the Gnostic view. According to Anton Parks, there is also a mistake there. The gifted geneticists who made us were not as evil as it seemed at first. To Parks, the mother goddess is the Sumerian goddess Tiamata. That is she who deserves firstly the title of primordial serpent. Initially, this term was positive because the snake is the wisest among all the field beasts, said the oldest version of the Torah, called the Septuagint. As for the Bible, it says quite the opposite. The snake is the most cunning of all animals. Thus, the serpent is the ally of men and the creator of the human race. Well, you know, a snake kills rats, and I would rather be with a snake than a rat. He personifies the mother goddess. Tiamata, assisted by her son Enki, called Osiris in Egypt,
Owens in Persia,
and Prometheus in Greece. Among the Dogons, he is Nomo. Among the Mesoamericans, he is Quetzalcoatl. And among the Hindus, Vishnu. He is the first instructor of our species. Like the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl, like the god fishes Nomo, Owens, or Vishnu. He has always supported and defended men when other gods wanted to kill us. As our creator, Prometheus, siding with the men against his uncle, the powerful Zeus. Or again, as Osiris protecting us from Seth. I thought it was Seth who wanted our loss. Or as Enki protecting us from Enlil, who also wanted to end the human experience because we were too loud, right? As we already understood, all these legends refer to a unique history, and their convergence support its veracity. Indeed, I think our history is way more than we even can consider, because all the good stuff is kept from us, etc. How come the snake, our designer and our ally, the wisest of all animals, has become the most cunning, the most dangerous? The beast identified to Satan in our modern religions. According to the translators of the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, it is explained
by a semantic shift. Yes, geez, I mean, when the Romans wiped out the Gnostics and when they conquered Egypt, they took whatever they felt they wanted of their religion and their myths, and they did the same thing to the Greeks. The Romans, I don't think they ever had an original idea. Beast is the translation of quasi-homophones in Aramaic. Hawa, Hewa.
Hewa.
Hewa meaning stupid. Hawa meaning to teach. And Haya meaning serpent. The gods' geneticists work on the human genotypes that the text calls modelings. Then the authorities called the beast so that she corrects the mistake of their modelings. The beast is not evil as she corrects the mistakes of the apprentice sorcerers. The true meaning of the beast is the instructor, as she was thought wiser than anyone. Whether we like it or not, we are the children of the beast, and it does not stop us from being born of light.
Well, the Bible had two gods. The Old Testament, Elohim, Saturn, El, and the New Testament is Yahweh, Jupiter, gods, and the angels who accompany. In the Rig Veda, devs, that's funny, because they call developers on games that they have for multiplayers, you know, from developers to devs, and when they're talking about human creation, they have devas. It's kind of interesting. The angels, devas, and the titans, Osiris, are similar. There are no coincidences. If the angels are represented in the guise of men and birds, the titans are in the guise of dragons and snakes. Once again, one finds the idea of birdmen and snakemen, but this time at the other end of the world. We may wonder if those snakes were, some of them being giants, these titans, who were the old masters of the earth, would not simply be the ancient people of the dinosaurs. Man would have been living with them for millennia. Traces still remain in everyone's mind. At the same remote time, birdmen and snakemen would have appeared. India, Mesopotamia, and America. If all these people have named them the same way, there must be an obvious reason. What does the bird? It flies. These men knew how to fly. What does the snake? It crawls. But he also swarmed on the surface of the water. He also swam on the surface of the water, or just below the surface. These men knew how to sail on and underwater. Their planes were also submarines, as the swordfish of E.P. Jacobs. Another thing that is not irrelevant, the snake and the vulture were the hallmark of the first pharaohs of Egypt and their successors, and have kept through all the dynasties. According to Sri Mataji. Who? Sri Mataji. This symbol means the awakening of the Kundalini. The snake is the Kundalini, and the vulture is its rays. This implies all pharaohs were awake, as well as all those who adorned the title of snake vulture. Why not? I readily agree. The ritual of the foundation of the temple, the king wears the title of snake charmer. The bird is the animal that is closest to celestial forces. I'm a hawk hovering over the country, which arises on earth, determine its borders. I'm a reptile seeking shade, hiding in the protective enclosure, wrote Hatshepsut. There it is, Queen Hatshepsut. Yeah, I used to have a hard time saying Hatshepsut, so I figured it out. Practiced. Sovereign of Egypt, hitherto governed by men, she reigned 21 years, from 1479 to 1458 BC. After 7 years, she gave herself the rank of pharaoh. Kundalini gives us our second birth. As the snake, the bird is an animal that is born twice, first as egg, then as chick. This idea of rebirth through the power of subtle energy is expressed in the symbols of the cobra and vulture, both born out of an eggshell. The vulture is the fate of being reborn, free to fly to be closer to the sky. In India,
It's called Divija, D-V-I-J, the Twice-Born. And that was just reading from this website.
Oh, blast. There's one more. It's called ADAPA. I mean, I might as well finish the circuit. So just hold on tight for a second. I gotta go dig it up. Thought I did. Jeez. Right back. I'll just go ahead and play this video again. I put some pretty cool GIFs to it. It was fun to make. Might as well show it again.
The man had missed his The Tale of ADAPA. If the Old Testament appears straight out of the ancient texts of Babylon, no Sumerian myth tells of the fall of man as was told in the Bible. This time, the Hebrew writers have used another source that we do not get. However, a cuneiform poem could well be the source of the story of Genesis. The tale of ADAPA was found in two places in the ancient world: El Amarna in Egypt and the archives of the Egyptian kings, and in the encyclopedic library of the Assyrian king Ashur-banirpal. It is assumed that this distant time this tale was known everywhere, just as in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The subject of this story is the quest for divine immortality. As in Gilgamesh, the quest ended in failure. Second, there is great similarities between the two stories. And despite some differences, one may wonder if it is not the same hero. While Gilgamesh is presented as the first king of men, ADAPA is a perfect prototype of Homo sapiens, designed and built by Prince Enki in his Abzu. Remember, Enki's Abzu was a secret estate he owned underneath in the hollow earth. With great wisdom, Enki gave him wisdom, but not eternal life. This is the beginning of the tale. Enki's wisdom was elementary caution to avoid possible rival. Yeah, he was saying, I'll give you the smarts, but I'm not going to give you eternal life, because then you could be my rival. Makes sense? Anyhow, Enki uses his smart prototype as a servant. He teaches him to make all kinds of services in the home and in the fields. On this reading, it is troubling that we have imitated this guilty, casually inventing slavery. Moreover, we have not invented. It is God's example. ADAPA got no time to rest and had plenty of jobs: hunting, gathering, fishing for his master, cooking, and helping his prince like Friday with his white god Robinson. One day he was fishing. ADAPA suddenly saw the south wind that rose and flooded the boat. In the great danger of capsizing, ADAPA lost his temper and broke the wing of the south wind. How can the wing of a wind be broken? Everyone knows that the wind does not need wings to fly. Only birds have wings. Birds, insects, angels, and airplanes. The myth of Zu, another Sumerian poem, confirms this track. Zu is struggling with the gods, who send him several weapons to beat him. One of these weapons, the south wind, will wound Zu. In the myth, it is clear that the south wind is a killer drone, automatic hunting aircraft, patrolling along the border to destroy everything that presents itself. The land of gods was well kept, especially the area of the spaceport. True umbilical cord linking Lebanon to the orbiting god's mothership. myths are written in a coded language that one has to decrypt. In light of the myth of Zu, we will be able to read the tale of ADAPA otherwise. Meanwhile, in his heavenly abode, the chief god Anu is worried because the south wind did not blow on the earth for 7 days. His deputy investigates and informs Anu that a mere mortal has put off. Full of fury and contempt, Anu summons ADAPA, human, in the mothership. This is where we learn that ADAPA, the human, with near beast a status to the chief god Anu, got his own Shumu. A Shumu was a personal space shuttle he piloted perfectly. Gee, this ADAPA is not a normal guy. Of course not, since he is a special prototype that Prince Inky has developed for, and the shuttle is included. ADAPA also received weapons. Otherwise, how could he broke the wing of the south wind? Inky, the rebel prince, was the creator and defender of mankind. His Greek counterpart, Zeus, Prometheus. Since when are Zeus and Prometheus morphed into the same entity? They're not. According to Greek myth, Prometheus, a titan, tricks Zeus. Prometheus was the bad boy who taught the human race fire. So the kids got the matches.
Yeah. Today, fire. Tomorrow, nuclear bombs. 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 Brave in defense of his creatures, which will culminate in exile, but not in Russia, not beyond the Scythian plains. As stated by the Greek poet Aeschylus, Inky was exiled to America with his son and all his people. For now, the prince protects ADAPA and briefs on how to behave in front of mighty Anu. Up there, he said to his protege, no funny tricks. You better remember it every single second. Then Prince Inky lavishes great advice. Thus, he hopes ADAPA should be able to overcome the trials that Anu, his dear uncle, is sure to hand him. First tip, you won't go to Sipper, spaceport in Dilmun. Here, the gods are strong. Together they buzz like bees. You know, speaking of spaceports, Velikovsky had quoted a Russian scientist as stating that those big pillars that are in Baalbek, yeah, the big things in Baalbek were once a spaceport. It's in my video, The Nephilim, where Velikovsky mentions that. Okay, back to the story. Here, the gods are strong. Together they buzz like bees. You will lose your means, if not your life, to go to the star city of Anu. You will take the Shimu I made for you. Your Shumu will easily take you to Olympus, Hyperborea, Avalon, Nibiru, the radiant city of the gods in space. You cannot miss. It shines above Berea as a nearby star. Okay. So that's what ADAPA did. He arrived at the all-powerful gods in his personal Shumu, as if God himself, not a mere mortal created by his master Genesis Prince Inky. Then he landed his Shumu next to the superior gods. The Sumerian word Shumu, which derived the Hebrew word Shem, means name or fame, but it has another meaning according to R.A. Bolle, rocket or UFO or Vimana in Sanskrit. His erudite and sensible demonstration convinced me. Anu is impressed by the intelligence of ADAPA. He wondered how this half-ape could acquire forbidden knowledge, which are reserved for gods and their semi-divine bastards. The God of gods has said that this is not an ADAPA like other livestock. No, we're livestock. He asked angrily why Prince Inky he disclosed to you in terms of earth and heaven to you, half-ape, human slave, strained, vile, and worthless, period. Without any force, what right have you, insolent? He built a Shamu. ADAPA kept silent and felt no fear, as his master told him. Suddenly claimed, the powerful king said blandly, drink this water of life and live eternally. Eat this bread, and your pineal gland will glow, giving you divine powers that you miss. Stay here with the snake gods, and you will know eternal bliss. But to get it, he must renounce his human appearance and agree to become reptilian like all the eternal gods. Inky warned ADAPA to refuse any food, any drink, if he wanted to come back to Earth safe and sound. The pineal gland is also called the gland of awakening. It can be concluded that the water of life of the gods was a magic potion that gives enlightenment and his divine pouvoirs and eternity and youth. For that matter, Sumerian priests are represented with the situla, or brandy bucket, in one hand, while on the other hand they rise a pine cone at the height of their eyes. It's not a fruit or anything that may be eaten, as some scholars have imagined. This is the pineal gland. This gesture means enlightenment. ADAPA hastened eternal life, tempting gift. Inky has warned him to refuse, so he does refuse. Anu is furious at the affront. He feels a scheme hatched by his nephew, this cheeky Inky who represents nothing. Why do you refuse eternity and happiness, you stupid monkey? ADAPA naively replied that his master told him not to accept anything. That does not calm the anger of the God of gods. Anu sends an archangel to punish this dog Inky. ADAPA is said that his last hour has come. Anu relented. It was too late to ADAPA symbolically. The man had missed his chance to have eternal life. ADAPA returned on Earth. ADAPA returned to Earth, a journey during which he saw the wonders of space. As ADAPA could see the sky from horizon to zenith, he saw its glory. The end.
This interweaving story documents the arrival of advanced beings, ancient aliens who came to our planet from the distant reaches of space, discovered by modern science.
It sounds like a dog toy. But actually, this is the sonorous war cry.
Oh man, I got a tasty treat for you. Just hold on. I'll be right there. This is gonna be bad.
In the valley that gives birth to two rivers, the Orontes flowing to the north and the Litani flowing to the south and west, between the mountains of Lebanon and anti-Lebanon, where roads from Palestine in the south Damascus in the east, and the seacoast there to Hamath in upper Syria lie the ruins of Baalbek. When we compare the ruins of Baalbek to many ancient cities which we visited in Italy, Greece, Egypt, and other parts of Asia and Africa, we cannot help thinking to be the remains of the boldest plan attempted in architecture. Is it not strange, then, that the age and the undertaker of the works, in which solidity and duration have been so remarkably consulted, should be a matter of such obscurity? From the time that this was first written, in the 50s of the 18th century, up until today, nothing was added to dispel the obscurity which envelops the origin of this temple city. The excavations undertaken there brought no solution to the problem of its origin or the nature of its cult. No early inscriptions were found. Throngs of travelers who spend their day wandering among the ruins of the magnificent Acropolis go away without hearing what the role of the place was in ancient times, when it was built, or who was the builder. The pyramids, the temples at Karnak or Luxor, the Forum, and Circus Maximus in Rome were erected by builders whose identity was known. The marvelous site in the valley, on the junction of roads running to Hamath, is a work of unknown authors in unknown ages. It's as if some unknown mysterious people brought the mighty blocks and placed them in front of the snow-capped Lebanon mountains and went away unnoticed. The inhabitants of the place actually believe that the great stones were brought and put together by jinnin, mysterious creatures, intermediates between angels and demons. Solomon's Baalbek. Early tradition, which may be traced to the Middle Ages, points to a definite period in the past when Baalbek was built, in the time of Solomon. Ildrasi, the Arab geographer, wrote, "The great temple city of astonishing appearance was built in the time of Solomon." Ghazwani explains the origin of the edifices of the name of the place by connecting it with Balkis, the legendary queen of the south, and with Solomon. He must have been some kind of big shot. The traveler Robert Wood, who stayed at Baalbek in the 1750s, and who published an unsurpassed monograph on its ruins, wrote, "The inhabitants of this country, Mohammedans, Jews, and Christians, all confidently believe that Solomon built both Palmyra and Baalbek." Another traveler who visited Syria in the 80s of the 18th century wrote, "The inhabitants of Baalbek assert this edifice was constructed by jinnin, or genies, in the service of King Solomon." Some scholars looking for Baalbek in the scriptures identified it with Baal Haman, referred to in the Song of Songs. And again, Baal Haman is supposed to be for Baal Lath or Baal Gad. Also, Baal Zaphon or Zeus Cassius was proposed as Baalbek. In this connection, it could be said that, according to the Talmud, Gad, G-A-D, was the name of the planet Jupiter, and Zeus Cassius signified Jupiter of Lebanon, and Haman was supposed to be a Syrian form of the name Ammon, who, according to the Greek authors, was Zeus Jupiter. All this together, if correct, points toward the cult of Jupiter in Baalbek, and that would line up. The place would have had to have been occupied when Jupiter was still close to the Earth. Legend has it that in orbit around the Earth is a mysterious dark object which dates back perhaps 13,000 years. Its origin and purpose are inscrutable. Dubbed the Black Knight, this elusive satellite has allegedly been beaming signals towards the Earth and inspected by NASA astronauts, yet only a few on Earth officially know of its existence. The origin of the ominous name is part of the enigma. It is impossible to discover who first called it this, or indeed why. Humans have only in the last 60 years had the technology to launch man, a man-made object, into space. So what is the logical explanation of tales of an alien intruder on our doorstep? And she has written here the Tesla transmissions. The first apparent part of this story begins with signals heard by Nikola Tesla, a brilliant Serbian inventor who created our electric system that we still use today, and described by many, thanks to his often eccentric behavior and opinions, as a genuine mad scientist. Well, putting him as the evil villain on the Superman cartoon didn't help. He spent most of his career in the USA. That's part of the ongoing suppression of electricity. He was an electrical engineer who produced works which explored the idea of radio and wireless transmissions in 1899. He reportedly intercepted a signal unlike any of the natural sources from Earth, such as electrical storms that he had already investigated in his experiments. Instead, he announced that regular signals must be coming from an intelligent outside source, potentially inhabitants of Mars. And there is a whole diatribe on that. It's very controversial, but I can't just poo-poo anything Tesla says, because it might sound crazy to us, but we just don't know in many cases. Tesla never claimed to have heard signals from a satellite orbiting Earth, but today there are those who say he was listening to a transmission from an orbiting satellite of unknown origin, later called the Black Knight. It is slightly more likely, though, still very far from probable, that what Tesla detected was not an orbiting satellite, but instead signals emitted from natural objects. Today we know of some natural extraterrestrial repeating sources such as pulsars. They don't very often call them neutron stars anymore because they're impossible. These fast-spinning stars emit a rhythmic signal. They were first discovered in 1967 by Northern Irish astrophysicist Jocelyn Bell Burnell. Until certain of their origin, they were jokingly nicknamed Little Green Men signals. I think they're still called that. Tesla was not hearing the signals from pulsars, though, and was completely unaware of the nature of what he had detected, if indeed he picked up anything at all. This author's just too willing to poo-poo anything. Tesla apparently never tried to repeat his observations, claiming he had other matters that took priority, an astonishingly casual response to so significant a claim. Well, she's just never happy. Either you just want to dismiss him for announcing it, or you want to say that he was not serious enough. He probably got embarrassed after they made fun of him. That's the part that stinks. And I don't know, the Black Knight, I've done a lot of research on it, and it just depends on the source.
Yeah,
I hear that it could have come from the star system Aldebaran. This lady is saying that 1920s anomalous signals were again detected by amateur radio operators.
I heard a NASA astronaut explain it, that it was some kind of a space blanket that was supposed to cover something, and it slipped out of the shuttle, and it looks like that, just folded up or something. But it could be BS, of course, but there was an explanation given on it.
These were originally of earthly origin, but their timing was bizarre. A signal would be received, then a second repeated signal received a few seconds later. These long-delayed echoes, LDEs, are called now, were difficult to explain in terms of radio waves bouncing off atmospheric layers. In 1973, Scotsman Duncan Lunan went back to these signals to see if he could make sense of them. Miraculously, by plotting the delay times against the order in which the echoes were received, he could create what appeared to be star charts and diagrams. By deciphering them, Lunan decided that the signals were actually messages transmitted by a probe originally from the star Epsilon Boötes, Isar. which had been lurking near the moon for the past 13,000 years. Lunan is not a professional astronomer, but instead a science communicator, but nevertheless, the name Black Knight is never mentioned by him, nor has he personally linked his Epsilon Bootes hypothesis with the Black Knight. Okay, others seem to be responsible for this. Update. Another story dating back to the early 1950s claimed to refer to an apparition of the Black Knight, reports the detection of a signal by an object in orbit. This was a time of deep suspicions held by the two superpowers on either side of the Pacific. Neither the Americans nor the Soviets have the ability to place an object into any kind of an orbit at that time. Yet the discovery of an Earth-orbiting satellite was reported in a couple of newspapers from the time, and the respected astronomer Clyde Tombaugh, discoverer of Pluto, is said to have been involved. However, the article is actually a couple of synopses of a book by ufological author Donald Keyhoe. Now, he was a very serious man. I don't really take him as being a goofball. Alias Corona. A few years later, the Black Knight seemed to have made another appearance when American newspapers reported in 1960 that there was an unusual object in polar orbit. Then both superpowers had satellites in equatorial orbit, but not polar orbit, which meant that the satellite could see every part of the Earth. Yet neither country admitted owning it. This may seem strange, but remember that this was a time of deep-rooted suspicion and espionage, not just with each other, but now seemingly with extraterrestrials too. Declassified information now released from that time suggested that the object was connected to a Corona spy satellite under disguise. At the time, the U.S. Discoverer Research satellite program was actually a cover for the Corona project, intended to photograph sites in the USSR. The world was bracing itself for nuclear destruction, and we always are. Coming close to a nuclear war in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thank God for John Kennedy, is all I can say. And how, and that's why I find that period of time in history to be so fascinating. First of all, I was alive. I mean, we had just missiles upon missiles, bombs upon bombs, and two crazy generals who were just itching to burn millions of human beings alive. And their excuse was, it was inevitable, and we might as well do it while we can win. So, who knows? I hope they're never right. It's a miracle that it didn't happen. The more you learn about it, the more you realize that, we're still here. Thanks to one guy, and one guy only, and maybe his brother. For any story or conspiracy to have credible, it always helps to get someone high profile on board. In the case of the Black Knight, Project Mercury astronaut Gordon Cooper is a prime example. Cooper announced seeing many UFOs throughout his career. So when it was claimed that he saw green lights belonging to the Black Knight on his pioneering Mercury mission into orbit, with ground control radar, also allegedly picking up something inexplicable, it is often believed to be true. The STS-88 encounter. The most recent, most cited evidence for a mystery satellite from beyond dates from 1998. The crew of the Space Shuttle Orbiter Endeavour photographed an unusual object in low Earth orbit. These images are often labeled as the most definite proof of a satellite. However, on more careful analysis, this strange structure seems to be a piece of space debris. Oh my God, look at it. It's not space debris. I don't know what it is, and I wish I did. It looks kind of like a ship, doesn't it? The Black Knight rocket. There really was a Black Knight rocket. It was a British rocket used to test the design of a re-entry vehicle for the Blue Streak missile between 1958 and 1965. So they're saying here that it was claimed to be from the star constellation Bootes. And it travels in polar orbit. What are your thoughts?
Well, guys, I'm gonna call it. We've been here 3 hours, and we did like 4 or 5 before that, and I'm just beat. So, I'm going to say goodnight, and we got anybody? No, nobody's in chat. Okay. I know. I drag it out. All right, guys. I'm just really tired. I was falling asleep during that. So we'll play one song and go, and I'll come out and type to you a little bit. All right. Take care. I will see you soon. Be careful out there, the crazies. I'll see you on down the road. shuffle songs, and I have them right next to each other. Of course.
your ass. Oh yeah, you know I am okay. I think about your ass every day. But you know, baby, I'll be alright. I find another girl to take my place. She gon' make me feel good again. All I got to say to you, ram it up your snout.
Oh yeah, hold on. No, stop. That was a, I think that was a I Got Scorned and I Want to Make Myself Feel Better song. Thank you for coming, everybody. I'm just going to say goodbye to you. I had a great time tonight, and I'll see you probably Saturday. All right, what's this? Yeah, Craig, you're good. Hi, Kingpin, Alchemy 88, Jared, you hung out. Awesome. I love you, Alchemy. You are a staunch supporter. Jared R, another one, super supporter. Let's go. Let's see what do we got here. Let's see a blue. It looks like Alchemy and Jared are having a nice conversation, and that's pretty much it. You guys rock. Thank you so much for hanging out and humoring me, listening to my crappy music. You can tell. See, I was a singer in a rock band for about 20 years, and when I retired, it was my what do they call that? The opposite of an introvert. What is it? Anyways, an exhibitionist has to come out somewhere, right? So I figured telling the truth would be a good cause, but you guys let me play my music for you, and I really do appreciate that. I never get anyone going, turn that shit off. Thank you. All right, I'll see you. Take care. See you Saturday. Goodbye.